Hello and welcome to A Gypsy's Kiss, the vlog. I'm Shelley Carney.
And I'm Toby, and stick with us a couple of seconds, and we will talk about the postmarks in Fenn's new book, Once Upon a While. And you're back.
And we're back. So thank you for joining us today. We're talking about the postmarks in the book, Once Upon a While. And so are we going to start with housekeeping?
We should. I forgot that slide, though,
Okay.
so you're going to have to do it from memory.
All right. So we need to talk about Super
Moderator.
Chat. Moderator. We have a couple of people who have already been moderators, so if they come back, they still have the designation because we haven't taken it away yet.
So Man in the Barn, Jimmy Fast,
and Joel Lewicki.
So any one of those can be a moderator. When we see them come in, we'll just
Yeah.
let them know that they can moderate for us. Then Super Chat.
Super Chat is available if you'd like to donate some money to Super Chat, and it puts your name up in a highlighted box, and we'll pay attention to everything you say from then on because, you know, you paid for that.
So the order of the process today?
The order of the process.
Yeah, we're going to talk, and then we're going to take questions.
Okay. Yeah, well, just like always. We're going to do the presentation with the slides, and then we'll take questions, especially those that are on topic, hopefully.
Yeah.
And if we have time, we'll take a few off topic, but and we'll go about an hour.
We don't have an interview today, so we might be able to go longer if it goes that far. Although our presentation today is relatively short,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
we should just keep it within an hour. And then the only thing that we ask to make our life easier, to make Shelley's life easier, is to precede your question for us. You're welcome to converse among yourself, chat amongst yourselves while we're speaking. If you have a question for us, precede it with the letters AGK, so that we know it's for us, and try to hold your questions until we finish the presentation, because it's really hard to go back up and start looking for questions there. So just hang on to them. The other thing is, if you can't get back in, there's a 60-second delay between the time you enter something and the next time you're allowed to enter something. So if it doesn't come back right away, that's why. So we got moderators.
Well, Jimmy's there, but I don't know. It doesn't have the little wrench by his name.
Once you open it up and just, hey, Jimmy Fast. Does he want to moderate?
Add moderator. Oh, I don't know.
Oh,
We didn't ask. So I guess we need a moderator if anybody would like to do that. And share the stream. That's what I'm doing right now.
oh, okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation while you're doing that.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes.
You'll handle the moderator
Yes.
issue. All right. So what I want to talk about today is the postmarks that are in the Fenn's new book, his third memoir, Once Upon a While. Before I get started, and I'll remind everybody at the end as well, there are two things that will be helpful to you. This evening, I will upload all my digital images, high-resolution macro digital images of the postmarks to our blog at gypsyskiss.com. And also, there's a spreadsheet that I created that looks like this, and the link is already in the description of this live stream, so you'll be able to download this same spreadsheet and play around with it the way that we did to do our research. So as you can see, there's lots of colored marks on there. Can you actually see them? Let's see if I can do this. Colored marks on there. And the reason is we found there was some missing data, and we'll have to go into deeper analysis for that. But we were comfortable with where we got to this point, so we'll talk about that first. So, first of all, there's only 37 postmarks in the book. Although there are 39 chapters, 2 of the chapters are missing not only the postmarks, but what Fenn refers to as his My Two Cents. Each chapter is followed by a handwritten sentence or two of Fenn's thoughts on that particular chapter. There were 2 that he decided not to do that. So you won't find the My Two Cents. And then because I suppose he decided not to do that, there was no need for the postmarks, which identify that tract, that piece of information as his 2 cents. The 2 the 2 chapters are Shelling Corn, which the postmark would have been on page 34, and the second one is Glory is Never Enough, and that's a very short chapter. It's a 1-page chapter on a football game that Fenn had played in at, I think, Temple High School, maybe just junior high school. But those are the 2 chapters that don't have postmarks. To me, that implies that they're worth reading a second time to see if there's anything there. It was important. It was unusual enough for him to not include his 2 cents on those chapters. So maybe there's something there. What I'm looking for, whenever I do this kind of research, what I'm looking for are the things that stand out to me. And of course, because there's no postmarks on those 2 chapters, that stands out to me. Pure coincidence. So there were several postmarks that hit very close to home. The July 17th postmark happens to be my daughter Ryan's birthday. And yes, that's a boy's name, but my girls all have boys' names. Except for Erica, whose middle name is a boy's name. October 3rd is my daughter Erica's birthday. October 10th is my first wife, Kim's, and of course, you should know by now, Shelley's birthday. And then October 22nd is my mother's birthday. And the reason these Octobers were all interesting to me is because I've always claimed that I've had a lot of Libras in my life. My wives were all Libras. My first my first fiance was a Libra. My mother was a Libra. One of the daughter that required more attention than all the others combined is a Libra. And Shelley's a Libra. So all these women in my life have always been Libra. So I thought it was interesting. It just jumped out at me. It probably doesn't mean anything. But what I'd suggest is once you get the spreadsheet and the copies of the postmarks, maybe go through them and see if there's anything that strikes your fancy in terms of your relationships. I just thought, whoa. Because so the first thing that I noticed is that some of the books, and I noticed this on several of them, and I'll show you which ones they are, have what I would refer to as overstamps. So this is the one that's on page 50. The explosion on 3rd Street, and it is obvious that the story takes place on the 4th of July or sometime around the 4th of July. That's when Skippy's cache of fireworks blows up. But as you can see when you do take this up close, and this one I didn't have to overprocess, there's something stamped under it or over it, so it's hard to tell whether it's a Z that's part of the 4th for the 4th of July. There's a little hook there. But I thought, well, that's interesting. Considering how they made these stamps, they were probably digitally produced. You would actually have to work to put an overstamp on it. And it's not the only one. The other thing about this particular stamp is it's hard to make out the year. And when you look at the spreadsheet, you'll find the places on which I left blank. Where I thought to myself, I really can't, I'd be making stuff up if I tried to pull the year out of that. And the reason it became so important is I wanted to see their distribution based on what day of the year they were. And what I discovered is that the distribution is relatively straightforward. It's a little heavier towards the back end of the year, but not to a what I'd call a significance. They're pretty well laid out throughout the year, and that's true of the days too. Thursdays and Tuesdays showed up more often than anyone else, but again, the difference was not of statistical significance, so I didn't find anything in there. One other overstamp was on page 68. I never go shopping, and this was the year. and I did a heat map on this one so I could kind of coax it out of the image, and it looks like a 7 has been overstamped, has overstamped a 6. So you have to ask yourself why that happened. But again, I haven't done enough detailed work because it's going to require my digital microscope to get even further on this to figure out exactly what's going on. And the other thing is, I'm not sure what that tells us yet. It likely tells us something, but I'm not sure. The most obvious one to me was the overstamp on page 109, Salute to a Warrior, where either 7 was overstamped on 6 or vice versa. And I don't remember, I think that was a 2017. What page is that? Page 109. So page 109. Yeah, it was a 201, either 6 or 7 number. So the year was in the 2000s, but I couldn't make a judgment as to it's so, and this one is cross-process rather than heat map. And I couldn't find anything that brought it out anymore. They're just too integrated with one another. So the overstamps that I found that were obvious to me that I couldn't break out finally were on page 50, Explosion on 3rd Street, 68, I Never Go Shopping, 75, 102, and 109. And those are the pages, and then the chapters. One of the things that I noticed about the page numbers is there's a good percentage of these postmarks that are placed on pages that don't have numbers on them. That's a design decision that somebody made. So I on the spreadsheet that you'll see, that you'll be able to download, I listed them as either having page numbers, page numbered, yes or no. And when I sorted them by that, it's about a ratio of 1/3 no to 2/3 yes, that there were page numbers on them. What I couldn't figure out is the pattern, because at first I thought they didn't put a number on the pages on which there are images versus text. But that doesn't hold throughout, that particular hypothesis doesn't hold throughout the entire book. There are some numbers on which there are images and text. There are some numbers, page numbers, on which there are images only. So at first I thought it was, oh, this is an image page versus a text page, but that doesn't hold throughout the book. So again, might be something there for the overstamps and also how you look at the page numbers. But again, you'll be able to sort that out literally when you download the spreadsheet that I've put in the description box below. Then I went from there to missing data. And the missing data got real ugly real quick because it showed up in one of the few that has a bright colored background in the missing hiccup, where it's in the frame of the golfer. Pardon me? Unfortunate. What did I say? Missing. Oh, I'm confused. That was my fault. So I did everything I could, from heat mapping to cross-processing, to try and get this image out. To me, it is very clear that the date is 1949. By the way, this becomes important because there are several locations where it is, 1948. That was the point that I was going to make. There are several dates that print this debilitated 8. And the only thing that you have going for you to make sure that it's an 8, because it almost looks like a 9, is when you actually compare it to a 9. A 9 is almost ovaloid in shape. And this is one of the few postmarks that you'll be able to distinguish between the 9 and the discombobulated 8. But the point that I was trying to make is here, it's totally missing data that would indicate the day and the year. It's just gone. I've tried every way to pull it out of there, including magnifying it, and it just doesn't come out. Another example of missing data is page 123, The Memories That Never Die. And again, we have an 11. I can pull some of this out so it looks like an A. Starting with an A, there's only 2 months that have the letter start with the letter A, April and August, but I just can't pull that out afterwards out of there. So it's one of the ones that I'm still working on to see if I could get some more detail out of and fill in the blanks. By the way, if there's something that you can see that I've somehow missed, once you start looking at the postmarks that you'll be able to download, they're the same resolution that I had. They're full resolution. They're macro photographs. So you'll be able to process them in the same way that I did. So if there's something that you see that you can pull out, let me know, and I will update the spreadsheet with the new data so that everybody benefits by us doing this cooperative, what do they call it? Crowdsourcing research, crowdsourced research, crowd, it's not crowdsourced, it's crowd something, sourced research. We're all working on it together and sharing in the result. So the missing data ones include the unfortunate hiccup, memories never die, Mummy Joe, which has its own little thing of, that we're going to talk about in just a few minutes that you should have noticed. 135, cultures on top of cultures. 155 is my Candy Ann. And 167, parting with Suzanne and Alan. And that was one I almost put it up there because it kind of looks like 2012, but I couldn't convince myself. So when you guys look at the postmark associated with parting with Suzanne and Alan, to me it looks like 2012, but I don't want to influence you taking a look at it. If you can actually pull it out based on whatever processing you're doing, I would appreciate getting a kind of confirmation one way or the other. But for now, it sits in the missing data file. So the fun one of these is there's a couple of things. Number one, of the 37 postmarks that are in the book, is that right? 36 of them look like this. Instead of a day, which is how you'd find it, what you'd find if you looked at the postmarks in the Thrill of the Chase. In the Thrill of the Chase, instead of printing the Forrest's name up here, they printed a day. And then as you go through the research of those postmarks, you discover that this day and this date don't match. And they're off by anywhere from 2 to 5 days before or after. So it's kind of a complete guess that what they did. They didn't tie the day to the date. So all the ones in the new book, Once Upon a While, 36 of the 37, look like this. Forrest, no day, a date, and a year. Then there's one that looks like this. And you can already see the differences, but I've blown it up just a little bit even further. This is on page 127, me and Mummy Joe. Interestingly, he describes a cave that's not far from the east entrance of Yellowstone National Park. But what was obvious and therefore interesting to me is this particular postmark, instead of using Forrest's name, they actually give it a day, and instead of writing the word 2, they use the number 2. So all the others have the word 2. This one has the number 2. All the others, 36 of them, have Forrest's name up here. This one has a day. By the way, this is also one of the missing data ones. So as you can see, I've got the 25 April 1937. It looks, as I delve deeper into it from using cross-processing, heat map, and microphotography, this I'm comfortable as an A. I'm not sure about this being a P. That starts looking like an R. So I haven't confirmed that. Again, if you in the processing that you're doing see it as an APR, then let me know, because I've blown it up to even bigger than this and used my microscope on them. Still can't pull it out. Still can't pull it out with enough confidence that I'm convinced it's April. I believe it is a month A, either April or August, but I'm not quite sure yet. So if you pulled it out, let me know, and maybe send me an image of what you've pulled out, and I'll add it to the spreadsheet. So that makes that unique to the book. There is only one of those, and it's, as I said, in the chapter entitled "Me and Mummy Joe," and I'm not sure why he did that, but
this ink is darker too.
is it? I thought it was a different color.
It's darker. Cause look, that's like.
Oh yeah, that's much finer, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, this one looks like
Actually,
it's been.
Is it a different font?
Um,
S is no. I guess
no,
it's
it's just this one looks like it's a stressed font. They stressed this one, and that one over there isn't stressed. But the S's, see the S's make the big hook,
right.
and the M's and the W. Oh, there's no W. The M's are about the same. So, where are you going? Oh, okay. We'll come back. So anyway, damned interesting that you'd go through that much trouble to make that different postmark. Yeah, but you're right. I hadn't noticed that. Was something that I hadn't noticed, how this tends to be stressed. The postmark itself has the same level of digital stress put into it, but that's very different. It's the same font. It's fatter. I mean, it's not as wide. But it is less stressed than this font. So, same slide?
The sore thumb?
Yeah, it's the same thing. That's why I called it Sticks Out Like a Sore Thumb.
Oh, okay.
My little sense of humor. Okay, so that's what we got on Postmarks. As I said at the beginning of the presentation, I will be uploading all of those macro photographs this evening to our blog at gypsyskiss.com. You'll be able to download them there and do your own analysis. And then in addition to that, if you look at the description box for this particular live stream, and one, of course, it goes to recording, it has a link to this spreadsheet. It's in Google Docs, so you'll be able to copy it over to your docs, or you'll be able to download it as a spreadsheet that you can open up with diaphragm issues. You can open it up with your spreadsheet software, but then you can play around with the sorts the way that I did. I didn't see anything in the sorts that would really was statistically significant. It just didn't stand out to me. So, are there other options in these postmarks? Could they be transcribed into other kinds of data? I don't know yet. We haven't gone that far. When I saw the postmarks in the first book, in The Thrill of the Chase, I worked on them for about, I'm going to say 6 months. Over the winter, actually, is what I did. And found some things that interested me and were within the realm of statistical significance. So, not just pure chance. As in my daughter's birthdays, that's pure chance. So we'll do a little bit of that work over the winter and see if we come back with you next spring with anything else. Not that we're going to be gone that long. I don't mean to imply that you won't see us until next spring. So that's all I got.
Really?
Yeah. You want to do your questions first?
My questions?
Do you have any questions?
About what?
About the postmarks.
Oh. Well, why did we talk about that? Because is there a lot of interest in that? I have no interest in it. So
the postmarks?
Yeah.
For a person who has an interest in ciphers and codes, anytime you can show us an element of some kind that is consistent throughout whatever document it is you're analyzing, you have to look at it there, because the implication is that it's there for a reason. So I still need you to go through the book, and the reason is I've already found several typos, which really surprises me. Well, maybe it doesn't surprise me. Considering how quickly they got it out, it is very likely that they would have missed some of the typos, but also considering that he had 3 of his top people in Lou, Susan, and Jessica working on it, and I'm sure he read it.
And for you to find them, they must be obvious.
Yeah, because I'm not a typo person. I can read right past the typo easily enough. I do that often enough with my own stuff. That's why you're here, actually. One of the reasons you're here. Because Shelley's really good at both spelling and typographic errors. But one of them is really visible, you know, the difference between the printed picture of the one of the spices. I think he decided he wasn't sure. Cardamom. And then the paragraph title is cardamom. Ends with an M. I mean, a complete misspelling. So, but there were some others. We'll talk about those in an upcoming show and see if there's anything there. So the only thing about me and Mummy Joe in West Yellowstone is, you know, if you're a believer in the Yellowstone theory of where the treasure chest is hidden, maybe he's giving you a hint to keep looking in Yellowstone. You know, the last time we were with him, the last time we visited with him, the last thing he said to us was, "You're going to have to do it." I'm going to paraphrase the thing about the webcam.
Well,
right.
He said there was a webcam on Old Faithful that
he
likes to look at.
And it just popped out of nowhere. And so we drove off going, you know, like all searchers would, was, you know, why did he mention that? We weren't talking about West Yellowstone. We weren't talking about webcams. We weren't talking about anything related to the search. We made it a point not to talk about the search. And there it pops out. So we don't know. There's maybe something there, but maybe there's not. And apparently it's not interesting enough to have Shelley look at it, so there's probably not.
What, stamps?
Yeah, post stamps.
Well,
look at how,
you know, here's
look
what I
at
think.
how in the group they're just, don't you find that image just, that, I call it the poster.
Yeah, well, here's what I think.
What?
That it got so much attention in the thrill of the chase that he decided to do it again. And that's why there's overstamps, and that's why there's missing information. It's just to make people like you go crazy.
Distractions.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it does it for me.
Yeah.
For people like me, it is a distraction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because after 6 months, I never actually pulled anything out of the first batch. I mean, there may be something there, but I didn't get anything out of it. All right, I'm ready for Q&A.
All right, here comes the Q's.
Short day today.
Q's.
Are they not coming up on there?
Well, it's easier to hold this up.
Oh, okay.
Brian Schultz donated to Super Chat. Thank you, Brian. $10.
Oh, thanks, Brian. That was very kind of you. We appreciate that.
Jimmy Fast is here.
Hey, Jimmy.
He's helping us moderate. Rick Plank from Cincinnati. Jason Hilgerson. Jazz Winners from Iowa. Man in the Barn is also helping moderate today.
Thank you, Brian. I think he's a Brian, too.
Let's see. Jason says, Shelley, I checked out your other I think he means my other YouTube channel. Very informative. Made me reflect on my own relationship. Good advice. So since we're on the topic, if you haven't noticed, I do have another channel that's just gotten started. And it's called The Softer Side, Relationship Coaching for Men. And I created it because I had a channel, and I still have a channel called Wisdom Included.
For women.
For women. And I was noticing that I had more men watching and subscribing than women. So I went ahead and created a channel just for men to thank you for your loyalty. This coming Thursday, I have one coming out that's answering a question from Adam Foddy, one of our frequent viewers here at a Gypsy Kiss. So look for that to come out Thursday.
That was based on the question that he asked.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I did a video to answer his question. And if you have any questions that you'd like answered concerning relationships, please go ahead and go there and write them in the comments, and I'll make a video to answer them. Okay, so that's enough about that. Pamela Shetron.
She has her own YouTube channel.
Okay. What are your thoughts about the treasure chest being donated anonymously to the Smithsonian? Do you think the poem is Fenn's funeral procession? Well, we actually said it was his last will and testament, didn't we?
Yeah, we believe that the poem is effectively Fenn's last will and testament because of the way that it's structured. I think the person who finds it certainly has the option to do with it what they may, because he gives them title to that treasure. Gaining title to the treasure basically means that fiduciarily speaking, It belongs to you, so you can decide to do whatever you wanted to. I think we've mentioned in the past that we plan to put it up for auction, and the rich person that buys it can make a decision about whether they want to give it away to a museum or not.
And I think the Smithsonian has so many things that they can't even show, can't even display. They're put away in a warehouse. So
I think what it's worth, at least, is an exhibit. The question is where you would want to exhibit it. If I was going to do an exhibit, as opposed to a permanent display, an exhibit having a temporal component, what I would do is I'd probably organize a tour so that it is exhibited in various museums throughout the United States. And that way lots of people get to see it, and those museums benefit by it, because whenever you have an exhibit like that, you're always looking for donations, not only to support the exhibit, but to support the museum itself. So, so for example, I might start at the Denver Museum.
Or the Cody one.
Or the Cody Museum. So there's lots of places, if that was what you wanted to do with a treasure, which would be, I think, very generous of the person that did that. That would be certainly one approach. And the Smithsonian, I think, might be a nice place to start as an exhibit, a several months worth of exhibit, and then go from there throughout the United States. If that's what I was going to do, that's how I do it.
See, monkeyfication. What's with the postmarks in the thrill of the chase? I've never seen a similar postmark used anywhere. Why the discrepancy in day of the week and actual day?
So the postmarks, you have to remember, are not actually the result of somebody making a postmark stamp. I don't know how recently you've been to the post office, and they used to be very consistently used. Now, of course, they're done digitally. But when the post office has a large box, for example, or a certified letter that they have to stamp, the certified letter had the lip of the envelope has to be stamped with a postmark. And so they still have them, but the ones that were in the thrill of the chase, and I'm sure that the ones in Once Upon a While are digital graphics. That means somebody actually produced the postmarks. And my assumption was, because there's no pattern between the day and the date, if it was always plus 2 days or always minus 3 days, then I would say there's a pattern to be recognized, but there is no pattern. And it went from minus 6 days to plus 6 days, which implies to me they would put down the date, an indication of perhaps when Forrest was talking about that particular era, and then they guess at the day. So that's why, generally speaking, there are inconsistencies there. When I did the analysis, very, very similar to the one that I did on here with those, I noticed that the pattern in difference, there was no pattern in difference. It was as random as you could make it, which means at the maximum it could be plus 6 days off, and at the minimum it could be minus 6 days off, and the whole range was there, and there was no number plus or minus that was statistically significant. So I don't know that there's any difference, any significance to the fact that there's there, unless you were to start turning them into some sort of recombinant code. That's the only possibility, because it looks purely random. And that's honestly how recombinant codes look.
Okay, and we want to give a big thanks to Ashley Bergstrom for donating to Super Chat.
Oh, hi, Ashley.
Ashley Bergstrom.
Ashley is one of our big Facebook users. Hi, Ashley. Nice to see you. She usually has to leave in the middle of everything and go pick up kids. So if she has any questions, let's answer them before she has to go. Thank you. Thank you for the donation, Ashley. We really appreciate it.
Cindy agrees with me about the stamps. Cindy,
nothing there, huh? Well, Tammy agrees with me.
Ashley said anything.
No, she probably doesn't. Her sister.
I don't see any questions from Ashley, so we'll just go back to where we were. Jazz Winters.
Yeah.
think Fenn is telling people who are making the book to do certain things special to the book for clues, or is it just the creators of the book just adding things to make it look like era of the stories? So is it just decoration, or is it really a clue?
Well, your first reaction as you go through the first pass, your first reaction is that the dates are associated with the era of the story. At least the era. The problem comes in places like the one about the comic books. Let me see if I can find it on here, where the date is 1934. The year is 1934. The date could be anything, of course. I think it's the April one. How can I find it on here? But the problem with that is he tells a story as if he were, and I think he might have described himself as a preteen, a late preteen. That might be the one. But the date is 1934, and Fenn would have only been 4 years old in 1934 and not active enough to be, borrowing comic books from the gentleman that was responsible for destroying them and throwing them away. So I would say era, yes. Year, probably not, except in some cases. So again, and then the day, there are no days. So you had to go back, and one of the things that you'll see on here is I included a column which indicated what day the date was, although they're not included on each of the postmarks. So there's some, and again, I sorted them by day, and there was nothing that just jumped out. They weren't, there weren't 25 Thursdays, and they were all, the Thursdays and Tuesdays were a little bit higher than the rest, but again, not to a statistical significance.
I'm going to give you my 2 cents.
Oh, here we go. Boy, wait, I thought you already did.
Well, again, I think the only significance to the postmarks is that they're used in both The Thrill of the Chase and this book, which I have to wonder why. Why were they used in both books?
And not Too Far to Walk.
Not Too Far to Walk, yeah. So it's not like it's his trademark or his little logo or something of that nature. So why? Mm-hmm. What's the significance of using it in both books? That's my only question. Do you have an answer for that?
No, that's a Fenn question. Yeah. Strikes me.
Sure.
Yeah, why'd you use it in 2 of the books but not the middle one?
This one's from Mr. G. If you had to guess, how old do you think Forrest was when he first discovered the treasure location, and what might he have been doing there?
Oh, I just had this conversation with another one of our subscribers. So I think one of the conclusions that if everybody comes to sooner or later, as I did, and I'm sure a lot of people still do, is that Fenn had this young connection, this connection of his youth to Yellowstone. Therefore, the special place must be there, and that's how you end up in Yellowstone, because he had these so many years of summers with his family and his father and his brother that would make the place special to him. I spoke to a couple of psychiatrists, and I talked to them about this subject. And it was based on how I perceive my special place, and the reason is not that I have any plans to A, hide a treasure, or B, throw my body onto a place. I'm going to be here in the Albuquerque National Cemetery.
Santa Fe.
I'm sorry, the Santa Fe National Cemetery, because it has a much more beautiful view.
You point at it every time we go by. I'm going to be buried there.
That's where I'm going to be buried.
Yay. Oh, that's good.
And I spoke to these psychiatrists because my special place is not associated with my childhood, anything of my childhood. Although I went to a lot of special places. I trout fished. Shelley will tell you that every time we take a trip up to Pecos, we stop at Dalton Canyon, and I show her where my father used to trout fish and with fly fish, and where I learned from him. And that was a place of my youth. But my special place, the one that I'd go back to if, again, I was hiding treasure and planning to die around it, was something that I identified as an adult. And I think there, and so I went and talked to a couple of friends of mine who are psychiatrists, and I asked, we'd had a conversation about this question, and their conclusion, not having been asked this question before, their conclusion was that identifying a special place as an individual is a very complex process. It has to fit a lot of things for you as an individual, and in the case of Fenn, it has to fit a lot of things for the poem. So their kind of conclusion was that identifying a special place is a very adult process. You might be drawn back to, say, Yellowstone just because there's potential for lots of special places. But in order to identify a special place that has the kind of meaning that Fenn's special place does, one that has the potential to last for 1,000 years, there's a lot of complex adult thinking that goes into that. So I believe that Fenn was an adult rather than a child when he identified his special place. Now, that may be self-serving in that the implication is that he was in New Mexico, therefore his special place is in New Mexico, et cetera, et cetera. But from a rational interview the psychiatrist's perspective, and from my own personal experience that caused this conversation to take place, identifying your special place requires adult complex thought. Children haven't gotten to that stage yet. They're not thinking in terms of, as a matter of fact, if I were to talk about special places from my childhood, my father would be in every one of those special places. And they wouldn't be mine, they would be his. And he would share them with me. They wouldn't be the places that I thought of as special. He was an adult when he identified him as special. So I think Fenn was older when he decided upon his special place. I think it required adult complex thinking. And I think that was magnified by the fact that it also had to meet the criteria of the metaphors in the poem. So, did I answer the question? What was the question?
You got it. I think,
Okay.
How old do you think he was?
I think he was.
What might he have been doing there?
I think he was an adult, and I think he was exploring. And we are working on a theory that has to do with the summer solstice. And again, that requires complex thinking. And I think what he was doing is he was exploring, and he came upon this location, and it met a number of criteria that I don't think he was looking for a special place. I don't think he was specifically looking for a special place when he came upon what ended up his special place. I think he was exploring, and he found one component that intrigued him, and then he looked around, and it intrigued him even further, and then he came back at another time, and it intrigued him even further. Then he shared it with his father, and he shared it with Eric Sloan, and they admired it. They admired his thinking. So I think special places are associated with complex adult thinking.
And what I think is it doesn't necessarily have to be a positive experience that he had there. When I was a tween, I suppose, my family, we went to the lake. I believe it's Lake Havasu, and we decided to go for a quick ride on the boat around the lake and do a little fishing, and we did that, and then the motor died and we were stuck and we couldn't get back, and we spent the night out on the boat until the sun came out and somebody came and got us. So that's kind of a special place, but it's kind of because I remember it so well, because it was one of those scary experiences that you just remember as a child.
As a child.
So again, it doesn't have to necessarily be a positive thing that happened there. It could be something negative or scary that happened there.
Well, but at the same time, would you, if you were hiding a treasure, would you put that in your places, special list of special places to go?
If you got lost there and you knew it was very desolate, but it was cool all the same, it was a cool place to be, but it was desolate because nobody was around, and you kind of got lost there. Well, it might be. You don't know. Anyway.
What makes this show interesting is that there's a lot of stuff we don't agree on.
Okay, well, there you have it. But we do agree that B Cross, I think that's Brian Cross,
Yeah.
is awesome for donating to our super chat.
Thank you, Brian. That's very kind. Does he have a question?
Let me see.
Well, let's get to it. We'll get to it. We've got another 20 minutes, so we're good in terms of time.
Not yet. Not yet. Not that I've seen. Okay. It's back to sea monkeyification. Back to the thrill of the chase postmark. Statistically, wouldn't it at least one day name and date line up?
You know what? I actually came to that same conclusion, that statistically, if you were doing what I suggested, which is just randomizing them based on like, oh, let me use Thursday here, and you're right. Statistically speaking, there should be more. Actually, there should be more than one. And you'll have to go back to my blog. I wrote a blog post way back in 2013 on this subject. And I think in it I mentioned, that's the same thing, that the conclusion that you've come to, is that statistically speaking, you're bound to get one or two of these right. And that's not true. I don't think it's true. I'm going to say I don't think it was true. And so maybe the statistical significance is that whoever was making those postmarks actually made it a point not to have the alignment, so that they were all out of alignment, and that it was not a random selection process. So the answer to your question, I think, is yes. Yeah, statistically speaking, there should have been a couple that, if it wasn't random selection, intentional. Let's see. So it's intentional selection rather than random. If you had done it randomly, you would have gotten a couple of matches.
Wayne Peterson is chiming in on the museum. If you put in a museum, they insure it and might pay you to display it.
Well, that's good news. And again, I want to be clear, that is not our plan. But if Pamela, if in the nobility of it all, you'd like to put in a museum, there is a chance that you could get paid for it.
Oh, I missed one. This is Pamela Shitron.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there is a good reason why the chest was left unlocked and the key to the chest rests on top?
I do not recall having ever read or heard that there was a lock, because if you look at the structure of the hasp, I don't recall it having a place for a lock. I think the hasp has the U shape coming out of it. I can't remember now, but I don't.
Isn't it like a little animal?
Yeah, but when you flap it down, I think it does have a place to put a lock on it. Mm. I have never heard that I have never read or heard from Fenn that there is a lock associated with the chest, and B, that there was a key associated with the lock associated with the chest. So I don't know the answer to your question, because I don't have any factual substantiation to answer it with.
If you have a reference that we can read, that would be great, and we'll take a look at it if you send that to us. So let's see. Matt, would applying the Sloan joke perhaps align the dates? Sloan said he was born 1910 versus 1905, something like that from The Thrill of the Chase.
It might do you some good for the year, but the thing that's off in the I see what you're saying. So if you were to add or subtract 5 from the year, would then the days align with the date? That's an interesting question. I think it would end up just as random, and the reason is the year can only correct. If you were to change the year, you can only correct to -6 and +6. All the digits and all the digits in between. The challenge is it's going to end up in the same way. It's not going to. I don't think it's going to be any less random. But it's an interesting thought. I hadn't thought about it. Let me take a look at it. I'll pull up my spreadsheet from The Thrill of the Chase and see what impact it has. I add 5 to the year and see if the dates start. So I don't know. My guess is it would be just as random, but I've never tested it.
Okay, let's see. Jan Kerb. Do you think he was looking for artifacts or a good fishing spot or just a good view when he found his place?
He's such an eclectic personality. You know, when I go out, when I personally, and sometimes with Shelley, go out, I take my fishing rod with me. I take my camping equipment with me. I take my metal detector with me. I take my cameras with me. And the reason is, if I'm going to go out, I'm going to look for opportunities to do any of that. I don't think of myself, I am sure I am neither an amateur archaeologist, an amateur geologist, or an amateur anthropologist. I enjoy, you know, I just did some research on Mesa Verde. I want to make a trip up to Mesa Verde, but I'll learn by, you know, getting a book once I get there and having to figure it out. But if he's eclectic in his interests enough that he could be doing any one of those things when he discovered the place, I think what made it special was that it had the right combination of, you know, mountains, rivers, anthropology, geology, archaeology. If you look at it, you know, like the perfect, let me put it in context. A perfect place for me would be one where I could set up a campfire, wake up in the morning, take pictures, fish through early afternoon, you know, do all the metal detect later in the evening, and then go back to the campfire and cook some fish. So it would have, a special place to me would have all those criteria. And as a matter of fact, the reason I keep returning to Pilar, or the Rio Grande near Pilar in the, what national, that's a national, the Rio Grande National protected area, something. Anyway, the reason I go back there a lot is because it meets all those. It's great photography, it's great fishing, it's great camping, it's great hiking. It's got petroglyphs. It's got a history, and you have to pass through Velarde, where you can buy fresh fruit and vegetables. And wine. There.
Forget the wine.
Mesa Verde. Don't forget the wine.
Black Mesa.
Oh yeah, Black Mesa, right there in Velarde. So I think it could be any one or more of those things that he was doing, because he's very eclectic in his interests. And if I think about it, how I'd want it to be, it could be any one of those things that got me there. So.
Edward Owen says, great show. Where are you two going next in your search?
Well,
obviously, we just said Mesa Verde, right?
Well, we are going to, the next trip that we're taking together, and with Shelley's husband, Kevin, is up to Mesa Verde. We don't believe it's such protected land. It's a national monument, which makes the rules and regulations for taking things off there much different. It's surrounded by Native American land. So we don't expect that the treasure is going to be anywhere near Mesa Verde. But our most recent theory involves the movements of the sun, of the sun specifically, the solar system, but it's specifically the sun. And we want to go to both Chaco Canyon, which is on the way to Mesa Verde. Well, it's kind of out of the way, but in the general direction. And we want to go to Mesa Verde, where at one time the ancient ones, the Anasazi, were there. Mesa Verde plays into all of this because Mesa Verde was discovered by Richard Wetherill, who was an amateur anthropologist, not a professional. He was mostly a cowhand. He discovered it. Richard Wetherill was the one that found the turquoise necklace pieces that are on the bracelet that is in the chest that Fenn won in a pool game with a hotelier. One of the guys that owns a big hotel chain. Hilton. Wasn't it Hilton? He was playing pool with one of those guys, and he won the bracelet from him. But the point is there's a connection with what happened at Mesa Verde. And part of what happened with Mesa Verde by the Anasazi is that they had an understanding of the solar system and how the sun worked. And some of what they have done in terms of alignment with the moon and the sun is consistent with what the Anasazi, what the ancients did at Chaco Canyon here in New Mexico. So it's our next trip, but it's not I wouldn't call it a treasure, boots on the ground treasure hunt. It's a collection of research, learn more about the natives' understanding of the solar system, Native Americans' understanding of the solar system.
Okay. Have you met, this is from Jazz Winners, have you met Fenn's wife, and what does she say about Fenn wanting to be buried without her? I know my grandma would be mad. I think it depends on the person.
We have met her.
Because I don't think I'd have a problem. If my husband wanted to be buried somewhere else, it's your dad, who cares?
I think Fenn has a lot of respect for Peggy, but Peggy is also, I don't, so my opinion is you don't stay married for as long as they've been married and not have one of the parties be willing to accept who the other of the parties is. And I think what Peggy accepted a long time ago, aside from the fact that she was in love with this man, accepted that he is an unusual personality with his own way of thinking, and and if it wasn't for those things, they wouldn't have ended up as comfortable for themselves and the rest of their family as they did. So I think it's very different now, because I think Fenn has made the decision he's not going to drive someplace and throw his body on a treasure. I think he's going to, look forward, if one can look forward, to dying at home in your own bed with your family around you and closing your eyes peacefully. I mean, that strikes me as what everybody wants.
Except you.
Except me. But I think Peggy, if he had chosen ultimately to do that, I think she would have let him do that. Although at the same time, I think it would have created a whole bunch of other issues that she would have been left to deal with. And I don't think Fenn would do that to her. And I think that's why he ended up getting back to, let this idea of throwing myself on the chest go.
Man in the Barn says, I too have spent a lot of time looking at the postmarks, found nothing. What % of a possibility do you think they may be a red herring? I say 100%.
I'm gonna go with Shelley on this. I don't know necessarily 100% because I think they can be a distraction. At the same time, you can't. The only way you can eliminate something as a red herring is by actually testing it. So I'll do the research, and if at the end of that research I come to the conclusion that from the perspective of is anything here of statistical significance, then I'll say, it's a distraction. I'm not sure that I would use red herring. That means that somebody put some thought into this. And it could be very well just a designer looking for a design element that works for Forrest, what Forrest is doing. So yeah, I could come to the same point that you're at, but I won't come to that point until I've spent some time actually researching it there. And honestly, after 6 months of looking at the postmarks and the thrill of the chase, I came to the conclusion that there was nothing there. I'm not sure I came to the conclusion that they were, and the implication of red herring is that it was intentional. I'm not sure it was actually intentional.
So this kind of goes with that. Rick Plank, do you think the postmark stamps are created by Forrest himself? I don't.
No, Forrest draws stick figures and admits not to being artistic. Those are
Except when he's casting bronze, which is...
Yeah. I think they are what a designer would call a useful graphic element. If you wanted to, and I don't know who it was earlier that said, are they associated with the era related to the story? If you wanted to put a timestamp on the story to give an indication of about when it took place, because you're not you're helping the reader, perhaps. You would design something that fit that timestamp concept. And if nothing else, that's what a postmark does. So my sense is that, A, they were not designed by Forrest. It might have been a conversation about a design element, because I know he's been very involved in the design of his books. And if he didn't like them, he would have said no. If he didn't mind them, he would have said okay. So, but I don't think he's physically, I don't think he sat down at a computer and started doing the design in... It's not Photoshop. What is that? The other Adobe product, the Illustrator.
JT, Fenn has said the chest was not locked, but the key was inside the chest. He also said he didn't want to lock it because he didn't want the finder to break the chest in order to open it.
That makes sense to me.
Sea Monkeyfication says Harvey. I guess that's the bracelet.
Harvey, that's right.
David Whiskey, the chest is worth big money by itself. Sure.
Yeah, Fenn said he paid, was it $25,000 or $125,000 for the chest? And again, our position on the matter is the undisintegrated package, the chest and the treasure together have the most value from a collector's perspective. A collector is going to want every...
Mint in box.
Yeah, as Shelley says, mint in box, including the sealed wax jar.
Yeah. Jan Kerb says, you may run into a park ranger at Mesa Verde by the name of Christy Brown.
Oh, how cool. Does she live nearby? Is her home nearby?
That is all the questions for today.
All right, good.
We thank you so much for tuning in and for your donations to our Super Chat Fund today. And
oh, just a reminder, in the description of today's show, there's a link to my spreadsheet. You're welcome to download it and play with it. If you find any data that's more accurate than what I've put in there, let me know and I'll add it to the spreadsheet as it comes along, because you won't have editing authorities. Next week,
we're not going to be here because Toby's out of town.
Yeah, so you're going to have to wait 2 weeks.
Got to visit that new grandbaby.
I'm heading to the East Coast to visit my new grandbaby girl.
Yeah.
Because I don't want her to grow up not knowing that she has a grandpa.
That's right.
So I'm going to go.
Besides, you love to hold babies, so you'll probably be holding her the whole week.
I'm going to go spoil her for a week. So we're not doing a show next week, but we'll be back the week after that, of course. And if you miss us, go watch Shelley's show on her channel.
That's right. And for those of you who are worried, I'm not leaving a GK. I can do 3 different channels. Yeah. I'm capable of that. And I'm a multitasker. So don't worry. I'll be here. Not next week because he's out of town. I'm still around. But do watch my other channels if you miss us. And that would be Shelley Carney Productions for the softer side, or Wisdom Included for personal stories, support, and advice for women. So thank you. Yeah, she's not going anyplace. As a matter of fact, if Shelley were to say to me, I can't do this anymore, I wouldn't do it anymore either, simply because I wouldn't have the motivation to make the show. I'd still work on the treasure hunt, but wouldn't have the motivation to. You're my inspiration. Yay, I'm a muse. So if you have more questions or still want to talk to each other, please continue in the chat, and that's fine. And Toby will take a look at them later, and if there's anything we missed, he'll make sure to answer those questions. And also, I don't know whether you're aware, but we've been copying the chat and putting it when we post this as after YouTube finishes processing it, we added to our blog at gypsykiss.com, and we're copying the chat from you guys and putting it there. So if you missed any of the chat, you'll be able to go back and look at. You'll be able to go and look at it there. Mm-hmm. So are we good? I think we're good. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching, and for Gypsy's Kiss the blog, I'm Shelley Carney, and I'm Toby Eunice. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye bye.